Alright, today we're going to talk about fast twitch muscle fibers and how it can help you as a pitcher increase pitching velocity to get to the mid-90s and potentially beyond. My name is Josh Gessler, and if you're new here, all we talk about on this channel is to get to 95 miles an hour, because 95 is the new 90 these days. And to get to the Division 1 professional level, you need to be throwing 95 or pretty close to that. And so every video on this channel is dedicated to help you throwing 95. But again, there's no guarantees, but I'm going to do my best to hand down the lessons that I've learned from throwing in the mid-90s and what we've seen at the Pitcher Lab, helping guys get to the mid-90s and beyond. So let's dive straight into it. First things first, why is fast twitch muscle fibers so important? So when I was doing some research, there was a study that compared chimpanzees with humans, right? And they wanted to see who was stronger. And what they found was that chimpanzees were far stronger, 2 to 4 times stronger than a human, and they wanted to figure out why. And the overwhelming reason of why a chimpanzee is so much stronger than a human is because they have more fast twitch muscle fibers. And so the first reason is that the more fast twitch muscle fibers that you have, the stronger that you'll be. And it's pretty obvious that the stronger you are, it's going to help you with pitching velocity. And no, I don't want you to think about Yamamoto and how he does a lift, and he's extremely strong. Some of the stuff that he's able to do requires immense strength. And so strength is definitely something that is required for pitching velocity, especially if you're not a genetic outlier. And chances are, if you're watching this, you're not, right? So the first reason is that you are stronger. And now the second reason is that fast twitch muscle fibers are responsible for explosive movements, right? And because fast twitch muscle fibers contract quicker and faster, and they're just overall responsible for explosive movements such as the throw, jumping, everything that we need in throwing at high velocity. And so these are both things that can only help with pitching velocity. As a pitcher, if we can have more fast twitch muscle fibers, especially in the lower body. The upper body is very elastic, but having a lot more fast twitch in the upper body would definitely help, but especially for the lower body. There are direct correlations between how much force you can produce with your back leg and your front leg to ball velocity, right? With the back leg, to be more specific, it's impulse, and the front leg is knee extension velocity, right? And so those things do correlate with pitching velocity, and being able to produce more force, right, by having more fast twitch muscle fibers is only going to help your pitching velocity. Especially if we look at pitching velocity as a two-part problem. So you have the engine, which is the physical capabilities to be able to produce enough force to throw in the mid-90s. And then obviously you have the mechanics, which is being able to use all of that energy and force that you create and bring it to the back of the ball, right? But for this video, we're going to be talking about how to develop an absolute beast of an engine and how we can develop fast twitch muscle fibers to help us produce more force and throw harder. Now, to add to this, some of the hardest throws in the MLB are fast twitch muscle fiber machines, right? For example, Shohei Ohtani, he's stealing 50 bases, right? Aroldis Chapman, back in the day, he raced against Billy Hamilton, who was one of the fastest runners in the league, and he beat him in a race. Hiroki Sasaki, when they did some studies on him in Japan, his body and leg muscles resembled that of an elite sprinter, right? And I'm going to go into a little bit more depth on what percentages of fast twitch muscle fibers. I know this might sound obvious, but again, fast twitch muscle fibers are only going to help you with gaining pitching velocity. And so with the human body, I'm going to simplify this to only deliver what you would need to know, okay? So the human body has it has more, but let's just say for this example, we have slow and fast twitch muscle fibers, right? Let's just say this is slow and this is fast. And there's actually more than this, but for this video, all you need to know is that there are slow twitch muscle fibers and there are fast twitch muscle fibers. Now, the slow twitch muscle fibers are built for endurance, right? Think like long distance running, stuff where you have to work for a long period of time, right? The slow twitch muscle fibers take over, okay? And that the slow twitch muscle fibers are really good for activities that last for a long duration. Now, fast twitch muscle fibers, on the other hand, like we talked about, are responsible for high force, high contraction type explosive activities, and it's built for power and speed, but it fatigues really quickly. Okay, so this one is explosive, right? And this one is long durations. I just want you to remember that. And so if we look at this, right? If you're an elite sprinter, let's just say like the top 100-meter sprinters, they're gonna have majority fast twitch muscle fibers, right? This is gonna be like 60 to 70%. When I did some research, it said 60 to about 80% of their muscles can be fast twitch. But someone like a marathon runner might be 60 to 80% slow twitch. And so the body is going to adapt to what it requires, right? So elite sprinters, they need fast twitch because they're sprinting all the time. And so the body is going to adapt and create more fast twitch muscle fibers rather than if you're a marathon runner and you're doing endurance type stuff all day, right? Then it's going to create more slow twitch muscle fibers. Now, for us as pitchers, obviously we want to lean toward here, right? There is an endurance factor to pitching, like if you're going to throw 100+ pitches. But for the most part, and what we're talking about right here, to maximize pitching velocity, we want to lean towards the fast twitch muscle fibers, right? We want to be fast twitch machines, explosive athletes to be able to produce a bunch of force to throw in the mid-90s and beyond. Because that's an extremely explosive movement where you need all the force that you can get. And so we want to develop as many fast twitch muscle fibers as possible. And I will say this, there is a genetic factor to this. You know, humans are going to be born with having more fast twitch muscle fibers. They might lean toward having more slow twitch muscle fibers, but there is an ability to develop more fast twitch muscle fibers. Okay, so you can also always train that, and that's what we're going to dive into in a little bit here. And the main idea that I want you to take away from this is how you train is how the body is going to adapt. There's this thing called the SAID principle, which is specific adaptations to impose demands. Basically, however you train, the body is going to adapt to it. Okay, and so if you're doing a bunch of long distance running, right, like in the olden days, us as pitchers, we're told to run a bunch of poles, do a bunch of endurance work. Well, then what do you think is going to happen? Well, it's going to develop a lot more of the slow twitch muscle fibers, right? But if on a daily basis you're doing explosive stuff, you're doing plyometrics, VBT training, all of that, then it's going to develop more fast twitch muscle fibers. Okay, and so I want you to look at your training right now and be like, okay, if I'm trying to be as explosive as possible, if I'm trying to be a beast of an athlete, am I doing mostly fast twitch muscle fiber activities, or do I have a lot of slow twitch muscle fiber activities? And so in terms of the tactical things of how you can train to increase fast twitch muscle fibers is firstly to avoid slow bar speeds. Right? And so I will preface in saying this. If you're a guy who's skinny, weak, right, then you do need to go out and lift heavy weight to build a good strength foundation, right? We've talked about this multiple times where you need to build a really strong strength foundation before you start to move into a lot of this explosive work, right? But if you do have a strength base, now you want to avoid slow bar speeds as much as possible. And what I mean by this is super heavy weight where you're moving the bar and it's just a slow movement. And that is not an explosive movement, and it's not good for developing fast twitch muscle fibers, right? Instead of that, I will do something more speed-based, like VBT, right? Where you're working within a range of speed where you make sure that you're moving explosively and quickly. Now, this is such a big one because what we see with a lot of college athletes is that they do their college programs, which is, big lifts, hypertrophy type work. Right? And so they're doing heavy movements slowly with heavy weight, right? And yes, it's going to build strength, it's going to build a foundation, but they're throwing slower and they wonder why. Well, you're not training your body to move explosively like it would in the pitching delivery. Okay, and so the first thing would be avoid slow bar speeds. And so this is what we saw with one of our athletes, Jake, who was going through a college program and they were doing a bunch of heavy lifting. Right? And he had never really done any speed work before. And so he was doing a lot of heavy lifting, he was putting in a bunch of work, but his velocity just didn't go anywhere and he was wondering why. And so when he came to us, we programmed him a bunch of speed work, and I'll go through some of the stuff that we did later on in this video. But once he got his body to start moving quickly, that's when his velocity just spiked, right? Because now we're teaching the body to move quickly rather than move super slow with these slow bar speeds in the gym. Now, the second rule is to avoid fatigue, okay? So this is kind of similar with slow bar speeds, but what happens when you get super tired and you're lifting in the gym, Let's just say dumbbell press. You do 5 reps, and then 6th rep, 7th rep, and you're close to failure, and you're grinding it up, and you're like, oh, I need to go to failure. So you come back down, and then you go again, right? That's slow bar speeds, right? It's a slow lift. And the more tired you are, right, the more the slow twitch muscle fibers are gonna kick in, because the fast twitch muscle fibers are already burnt out. They're already tired, right? And so they're gonna make the slow twitch muscle fibers work more. And if you're starting to give that stimulus to your body to, hey, we need more endurance, then you're gonna build more slow twitch muscle fibers, right? And so this is why we never train to failure, where you're failing a rep, because I mean, we're not trying to be bodybuilders here, right? We're trying to be explosive athletes to throw the hardest that we can. And so that is the second rule. And so there are a bunch of ways to monitor fatigue and make sure that this doesn't happen. And one of the big things is to regulate training volume, okay? And volume pretty much means how many sets of each exercise you're doing. For example, if you're doing 5 sets of 5, right? This is a very common program that even I did when I was very young. It's good for strength, but not so much for someone like me in my current situation, right? And so if you're doing 5 sets of 5 at a heavy weight, the 5th set, I mean, you're gonna be crushed, right? The bar speeds are gonna be slow, you're gonna be fatigued. And so you wanna keep training volume a little bit on the lower end, right? Because you wanna be as fresh as possible for each set so that you can put in the maximal effort that you can and be as explosive as you can with each set, okay? Another one is rest, right? Rest between sets. You wanna be resting a lot. You don't wanna be doing one set, right? And then waiting 10 seconds and then doing the next. You wanna rest like 3 to 5 minutes in between sets to make sure that you're as fresh as possible for the next set, right? Because a lot of this, right, we're trying to move as explosively as possible to firstly develop fast twitch muscle fibers, but also train our central nervous system to fire as quickly as possible, right? Because those are the things that are gonna matter in throwing harder. Now, the third rule is to avoid endurance work. And so this is stuff like, you know, jogging for a long time, running for a long time, you know, like cycling for a long time, anything where you're working for a long period of time, I would try to avoid as much as possible. Maybe keep it to a minimum, right? Because it's still good to do that stuff, but I would keep it more to a minimum. And if you're a guy who does this stuff every single day, we had an athlete who would just go out and run every single day for like miles, right? He was a cross-country guy. And he was wondering why he's moving slow. I mean, it's like, dude, you're training your body to be slow and endurance type work. Like, you can't expect to be as explosive as possible, right? And so that is the third rule. And the last one is to avoid overtraining, right? And this is very similar to avoiding fatigue. But if you start overtraining, right, and your body is just crushed, then again, you're just gonna be in a state of fatigue, and it's not gonna be the best state for you to build fast twitch muscle fibers and be as explosive as possible, okay? And so there was actually a study done about deloads, right? And if you've never done a deload is pretty much where you take like a week where you just recover, right? It might be more than a week, it could be 2 weeks, but it's a period where you just give your body a rest and recover. And what they actually found during this time was that fast twitch muscle fibers increased during this time because you're actually giving your body some rest, and all that fatigue, right, goes down, right? And so these are the 4 rules that you would want to think about. And I'm going to go into specific things that you can actually implement to develop more fast twitch muscle fibers. But again, the central theme is whatever you expose your body to, it's going to adapt to be good at that, okay? And so you want to avoid all of these things. But let's get into the exact training methods of how to develop more fast twitch muscle fibers. So there are 3 key ways that I would train fast twitch muscle fibers. And this is pretty much how I train on a daily basis and how we program a lot of our guys at the Pitch Lab are doing if they are in need of fast twitch muscle fibers and to move more explosively, okay? And so the first one is plyometrics and also sprinting. This goes without saying, but plyometrics are a very explosive movement, right? Whether it be any type of jump or sprint. And my favorite plyometrics for baseball players is unilateral plyometrics, okay? And so it's anything where you're doing stuff on one leg. And so for my own program right now, I have a single leg box jump, where I'm on my one leg and then I jump onto a box, right? As pitchers, we are always on one foot, right? So here, drive leg, you're on your back leg, and then front foot hits, and then you're mostly on your front foot, right? And so I'd rather train both of those separately. And I sometimes even incorporate different exercises for each leg, right? And so for my drive leg, I might incorporate more lateral type jumping stuff because I want to be really good in this plane, right? This is the position that we're in as pitchers. But for my lead leg, I'm more just, straight up and down, like vertical, anything where I'm absorbing a lot of force, because again, that's what is going to happen in the pitching delivery. But any type of plyometrics is good, right? And in particular, sprinting is extremely good to develop fast twitch muscle fibers and become more explosive overall. I've talked about this a lot in the past, but sprinting has so many benefits on training your central nervous system, fast twitch muscle fibers, and just becoming a good athlete overall, right? And that's why at the pitch lab, we actually have a bunch of sprinting variations that our athletes will go through, because this is one of the components within our program. Now, the second way you can train this is velocity-based training, VBT. This is my favorite way of training. And if you don't know what VBT is, basically you have a machine hooked up to the bar, right? Let's just say you're doing back squat. And you have a machine hooked up to it. There are a bunch of different machines, but basically it measures how quickly the bar is going, okay? And it's gonna give you a measurement. It's kind of like pitching velocity, where the radar gun will tell you exactly how fast the pitch was, right? And so this is pretty much a radar gun for how quickly you are moving. Okay, and I love this because for me, I stay within 0.8 to 1.0 meters per second, right? And if you don't really understand this, that's all good. I'll explain how you can do it without the machine, okay? But within this range, this is heavy enough for me to maintain strength and even build strength. And it's still within a range where I can stay very, very explosive. For the majority of my lifts, I'm within this range, and then I try to increase the weight. Let's just say on bench press, I was doing 135 at this range, and then I'll try to push it to 140 in this range, and then keep pushing it, right, to try to get to, I don't know, right now I'm at about 185. And so I know that if I'm continuously increasing the weight, then in theory, I'm getting more explosive, right? Because if I'm moving 185 pounds within this range, then I'm gonna be more explosive than if I was moving 135 pounds within this range. This is kind of what I do on a daily basis and what my training is revolving around right now. If you don't have a machine, then what I would do is to pick a weight where you're not grinding at all. It shouldn't be hard whatsoever, but it still feels heavy, right? It feels heavy, but you can move it explosively, okay? It shouldn't be so light to where you can do 1,000 reps, right? But it shouldn't be too heavy to where that you're starting to notice that your bar speed is slow, okay? So try to pick a weight. I would say it's about 60-70% of your 1 rep max, okay? That's what I would go off, and then I'll try to increase that, okay? So that is the second one. And the third one is just high CNS type work, right? With your throwing. So any type of medicine ball, pliable stuff, with the baseball, even any type of high intensity throwing, high CNS throwing, where you're getting that intensity up, is all gonna be good to develop the relevant fast twitch muscle fibers for you to be able to throw hard, okay? And so again, the key thing with a lot of this is fatigue management. If you push this and your body is crushed and your central nervous system is fatigued and you just don't feel fresh every day, then you're doing too much and it's not gonna do any good for you, okay? So you really need to manage fatigue. For example, for me, I do a daily workout, right? I pretty much work out 5, 6, 7 times a week now, but I do an extremely low amount of volume. I will do 1, maybe 2 sets of every exercise. So the volume is extremely low, but the frequency is extremely high. That's just how I like to do it. If I do too many sets within one workout, I feel fatigued. Mentally, I'm just not there, right? And I see my numbers decrease. But if I can come into the gym 5, 6, very high frequency, then I see that these numbers are improving, and that's what works for me the best. And so for you, I would see, frequency wise, I would try to test what works the best for you, right? It might be 3 times a week with a little bit higher volume. It might be 4, maybe 5. And that's something that you would test with how your body feels and responds, right? But the overarching theme is to keep everything explosive, and you want to recover and make sure that you're avoiding fatigue as much as possible. Now, if you're a pitcher and you're watching this and you want to increase pitching velocity, I want to invite you to book a call down below, first link in the description, and we can talk about how we can help you at the Pitcher Lab. The Pitcher Lab, we've been around for a while now, and at the Pitcher Lab, we dedicate ourselves to helping athletes and pitchers just like you to increase pitching velocity. And basically, how it works is we'll put you through a full assessment, work out exactly what you need to work on. We will then program you everything that you'll need to work on. And it's going to include everything that we talked about today and everything that I talk about in my videos. Okay, so you'll know exactly what to do every single day, and then you'll get partnered up with a coach who has either developed or is currently working with MLB pitchers, right? And so they are going to partner up with you and coach you to make sure that you're making as much progress as possible. And this is a perfect time right now. It's the start of 2026. A lot of guys are going back to their schools to go into their season, and they're just not happy with where they're at, right? And so if you're a guy who's just unhappy and you're ready to take action on that, well then book a call down below. I would love to talk about how we can help you in your specific situation to be able to either increase velocity or even just advance your pitching career. And I'll see you very soon. You can also send me a message on Instagram. I'm in there all the time, and so just message me with any type of questions that you might have, and I'd be happy to answer them. I'll see you in the next video.